We have another problem in this phrase. Disprove Genesis as what? What is the purpose of the book of Genesis? What is the purpose of religion in general? What are the criteria by which we are assessing its validity? Validity as what? Validity to what end? Validity as its efficacy in what context? In addressing what points? Well, to that, let us go to a further point. The Bible is neither historically accurate or objective. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, the book of Genesis fails the criteria for a history as outlined, proposed, and demonstrated by Herodotus, a pantheist, incidentally. So too does it also fail the criteria proposed by the objectivism of Kant, a Christian. Both academic methodologies proposed in the first case centuries and in the latter case millennia after the writing of the book of Genesis. So here we find, quite fairly, that the Genesis author miserably fails to meet goals which they were never intending to meet. As to what it is that the book of Genesis was written to, that's far too lengthy a subject to cover in any substantial level of detail in a quick little video. But we can summarize. The book of Genesis was written to describe a specific people's understanding of their experience and relationship with God. And here we find it succeeds fantastically well. We have illustration of cosmology. We have illustration of both the emotional, experiential component of living in a relationship with God. We also have specific moral description. We have exposition on the context in which this belief of God, in God, operates. For what it was actually intended to do, the book of Genesis is fantastically successful. The things that we attribute to God are things we don't know how to measure yet. Ah, yes, because of course, measurement is the golden standard, pun and allegory intended, for accuracy and discernment of truth. Yes? The moment we measure something, we have arbitrarily, purely arbitrarily, imposed a scope, a range of things which we will and will not be concerned with, as well as arbitrary demarcation. That's what measurement is. We may select measurement. We may select a unit of measurement in the hopes of finding accuracy, but accuracy itself is ultimately concerned with scope. Is a map accurate at the nanometric level? Of course not. A quick review of fractal geometry will reveal that a simple two-dimensional shape, when viewed from a distance, may, on closer inspection, include a circumference of literally infinite value. And again, what of the things which we rely on conceptually and pragmatically, for which we cannot propose any system of measure? How does one measure the accuracy of a communication? How does one measure the accuracy of descriptive device? Even in purely logical execution. Logarithmic calculation, for example. There is always a question of applicability of method. A given sequence of calculations may provide accurate results. However, there remains the question of whether that particular sequence of calculations accurately reflected the circumstances we were trying to model through abstraction, as well as the question of whether that particular sequence of calculations was perhaps even the best. How does one measure that? Even were we to take our hypothetical logarithmic equation, compile it, execute it, and check for the calculation time on the CPU, we find that the process instructions, memory architecture, calculation pipelines, so on and so forth, of a given CPU will produce radically varying results, and perhaps a different methodology would prove more optimal for a given calculatory process. Not the least of the problems of measurement and accuracy is the qualitative rather than quantitative distinction. Measurement provides us no means of addressing these. So why then would we continually turn to measurement as an ultimate and arbitrary arbiter for determining truth? The Bible is an odious document designed to deceive and enslave the mind. I can't grouse too much on this one. After all, the strong atheist came on this honestly. This is purely Nietzschean argumentation and language. So, we will rely on logic and science up to the point at which they fail us, at which point we'll start relying on emotional argument. Okay. I have to confess, I find it a little funny to hear the strong atheist being the person in the debate to bring the word design into play, given that the problems with that word are chief among the refutations for the intelligent design argument, specifically requiring that the person using the word designed demonstrate intent and intentionality, and specifically intentionality in sequence as a causal factor in the development of what have you. How exactly are we going to go about demonstrating that deceit was the primary motivational factor for the development of this or any other holy text? In point of fact, deceit falls apart the moment we can demonstrate, even anecdotally, conviction. This is roughly the same problem as the strong atheist who responds to a believer's profession of faith by calling them a liar. This is so simple that I don't even see why it needs expositing. If they believe it, however wrong they may be in their belief, however inaccurate, however the belief itself is neither informed by nor reflective of the reality, they are not lying. A person who is incorrect is not a liar. The beauty here is that whether or not the person is correct has absolutely no bearing. Absolutely no bearing. You see, deceit and lies have nothing to do with accuracy. They have everything to do with intent. And lastly, to enslave the mind. Again, emotional argumentation, but there's a little bit more here that's worth taking a look at. To enslave the mind, how? By inspiring conviction in an idea that one does not hold to be accurate, by inspiring belief in that which one does not hold to be true. By proposing a belief that is antithetical to the process to the discernment of truth. Here I have to ask, does a specific concept really and functionally define the ways in which one deals with concepts, insofar as a specific idea dictates terms regarding ideas? For example, the verification principle. I would say yes. I would say yes. And there are certainly within the body of believers people who hold convictions which are antithetical to the pursuit of knowledge. If one goes on to state that belief, or even specifically theistic belief, is antithetical to the pursuit of knowledge, they've got some explaining to do. Specifically, they find themselves in the rather tenuous position of justifying this conviction that convictions are antithetical to the pursuit of knowledge, and also find themselves in the position of justifying this conviction in absence of, and in point of fact, contrary to, the bulk of the evidence provided us by Western history.